Hi, my name is Gudrun from GE Designs. Welcome to my live quilting chat, Tipsy Tuesday. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being with us here on another Tipsy Tuesday show, 72nd show, 72nd Tipsy Tuesday episode. So thank you all. I want to start by welcoming everybody, whether you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube. New viewers, of course, so welcome, and I hope you stick with us. Now, make sure you tell us your name and where you're tuning in from in the comments. And I see we're already getting some people and putting them up on the screen. It's working great today. Thank you. So on today's show, I want to talk a little bit about piecing accuracy. There are so many things beyond just our seam allowance that come into play for us, our blocks to come out right and accurate every single time. So I did a video a while back that kind of focused on all the little things that come into play when we're talking about our seam allowances and our accuracy in general, things turning out accurately. So I think it's time to do a little refresher on this. I'll be adding some extra tips. So we're going to watch this whole video together again. And if you've seen it before and you're bored with it, go have a drink or something and come back. But I'm going to add some extra tips right after and have a good conversation with you. Of course, answer all your questions. Make sure any question you have throughout the show, post them in the comments. We will try and get to as many of them as we catch. And just bear with us because they do come through very, very fast throughout the show. And it's just the two of us. It's just me and the producer, Mr. Honey Producer. Yeah. So, of course, we love it if you use your thumbs up and hearts and likes on both YouTube and Facebook. Of course, if you are on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our channel because then you will always never miss a video. You'll always be notified. And as well, Gudrun's GE Designs page on Facebook. Make sure you like that and sign up for notification. Then we will always pop up for you. Now, if you're on Facebook, make sure you join our group as well. Gudrun's Quilt Crew, our private group. Which is so much fun and so entertaining and helpful and great people. So love having you all there. So let's also make sure we stay with the whole show through the end because, of course, every show, 2 winners get pulled for 2 $25 gift cards. 1 winner is live, and then the other one, we have a question at the end. So you want to stay with us throughout the whole show. Now, of course, last week we had a winner. I had asked you, if you had a favorite background. And the winner that got pulled is Miss Kathy Kittle. Congratulations, Kathy. You win a $25 gift card, and we will contact you. I believe we have your information, so we will just send you that gift card, add it to your account on GE Quilt Designs if you already have an account. Makes it easy, so you're ready to go shopping right away. All right, so I wanted to start by checking in on Fast and Furious Club. So Fast and Furious Club, our Quilt As You Go monthly project club, started this month, of course, or last month, I should say. It's October already. So September 20th was our first project going live, the off-kilter table runner. And it's been so inspiring seeing all of your off-kilter runners in all kinds of versions and all kinds of fabrics. And just like I said, you're not going to stop at one. So I already am seeing multiple people doing more than one and starting another one right when they finish the first one. It's going to be a go-to, I promise you. So I have been, like I said, if you haven't posted your photo of your runner yet, if you're in Gudrun's Quilt Crew, make sure you post it there so we can all see and everybody's inspirations. And of course, the next fall project, our Fall Fellows, wall hanging that I have right here. This one will be live this is our October project. So October 20th is when this one goes live. And so that is also if you're just wanting to purchase individual projects, so that is also the day where you can purchase that one individually. Now, if you purchased our 9-month or our trimester, the 3-month subscription, which you can still buy, by the way, then the project, the pattern, and the video will automatically show up in your account on October 20th. And of course, if you don't know anything what I'm talking about, it's a pattern Quilt As You Go pattern, all small projects throughout the 9 months that the club runs. Every month you get the pattern that's exclusive to the club, plus a video class of me taking you through every single step of the project. So it's really helpful. You can watch the videos many times as you want. They stay in your account forever, so you can go back and stream them as many times as you want, whenever you want, from any device. Very sweet deal. So I see Mr. Honey Producer is telling you all the quilts behind me. I have Roxanne on the wall, and she is a single pattern. The Rocky Road is in my mixology book. And then we have Sabrina, actually a free pattern on my website. So it's a little, just a bunch of hourglass blocks, but I thought we're easing into the Halloween moments. So you'll be seeing some more Halloween inspired quilts, Halloween fabrics, possibly some creatures showing up on our shows. But it's all fun. I wanted to mention one more thing about Fast and Furious Club. I am very excited. So as you probably know, if you've been watching us on YouTube and Facebook, you can turn on closed captioning. So have little, subtitles with all of our shows. And whether you're watching live, I think both have it as an option live, and then especially afterwards. Now, our videos that we do for the Fast and Furious Club don't come with that automatically because they're streamed from Vimeo. But we actually got an app to work to add closed captioning to all, and it's actually added now to our off-kilter video. So there's just a little on the bar on the bottom of the video, there's a little sign that says CC, so you can turn the closed captioning on and then just click it off if you don't want it. So it's really great, and I really want to thank the person that emailed me that she has some hearing issues and was wondering about that, if that could be added to our videos, and I just didn't realize it wasn't even an option. So we made it work, and so going forward, all of our Fast and Furious Club videos will have this, season 2, and we may even go back and add them to our season 1. Just bear with us, it may take some time, but we will definitely do that. So extra little nugget there to intrigue those that have a little bit harder of hearing and to follow along when it's a lot of demonstration and you're not really seeing my face. So very excited about that. I wanted to give everybody a little bit of an update on the batting. So as you may have seen happening everywhere, so there are, because of COVID and because of all kinds of systems in our country and all over the world being overrun by a lot of people ordering more of things, a lot of people ordering more online and shipping and all of this. There's all kinds of delays everywhere in our delivery services. And it's the same thing with our industry, because our industry has been doing very well. Everybody's home sewing, which is a beautiful thing. But the supply chain has been impacted. So our batting actually got impacted by that too. So it's not just about the raw goods having a longer time getting to the US, but it's also they are being stuck in customs for longer than usual. So that adds a week here, a week there. But the news are that they have it in hand already. Has been coated, which is coated with the fusible already. So which is done here in the States, and then they are now starting to package it. So we're hoping that they can ship it to us by the end of the week. Otherwise, we will definitely have it next week. And like I told you before, everything is ready to go. It's sitting there ready to just be stuffing that batting into a bag and shipped out to you. So if we could make it work faster, we would. If I could go and just chase that truck down or help out, unfortunately they're in Maine, so it's a little harder, but I would do it. But we have to have a little more patience with everything, and that's kind of goes with our fabric lines kind of showing up. As I've told you before, it's anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks to even sometimes more than that of a delay in delivery when we were told that the fabric ship, and then sometimes it's a couple of months later. But that's just something we have to be patient about. And I'm sure we got some fabric laying around somewhere in your house to work on until we get all the great new stuff. So I just wanted to tell you all of that before we dove into our video. Do we have any questions so far, either on YouTube or Facebook? A couple of things. So what we're going to see in this video, I did this a couple of years ago, but it's a really good video because I go through all the little things that kind of go into play with accuracy. Okay, Brenda has a question. Can I purchase the season 1 of the Fast and Furious Club and receive the pattern? Yes, so season 1 is available. You can purchase all 9 months and they will all be in your account instantly, both the patterns and the videos. So absolutely. All right, so what I would love is that we watch this video together. Make sure you take some notes. If you have any questions along the way, mark them down and we will have a good Q&A session afterwards. And like I said, there's a couple of more tips I want to talk about regarding a couple of accuracy things. And you know, these things are always inspired by what I see in the community, in the Gudrun's Quilt crew, questions that keep popping up and things like that. So I'm hoping to be able to answer some of y'all's questions afterwards. So let's just dive into it. Let's watch the piecing accuracy video. Hi, my name is Gudrun from GE Designs. There are a lot of things that affect your accuracy in piecing, more than just your seam allowance. In this video, I'd like to talk about all those things that come into effect and show you some of the methods and tools that have helped me achieve better accuracy. So let's start with our fabric. We need to pre-treat our fabric certain ways. If it comes straight off the bolt, obviously, I always start with pressing my fabric. And I don't like to pre-wash my fabrics. I actually just take my steam iron and give it a really good press because that makes those fibers readjust and gets my fabric ready for cutting. If you do like to pre-wash your fabrics, same thing will happen. You will still need to give it a good press, because we always want to do that. The fabric gets stretched onto the bolts, so we do always need to give it a good press so all those fibers will realign before we start cutting. In some cases, I actually like to pre-treat my fabrics with a little bit of stabilizer, and you can do 3 things depending on what kind of stability you want. You can use Best Press, which is going to give you just a light stabilizer, or if you want a little bit more, in some cases, I like to use magic sizing that is not as stiff as starch, but will give you a good body and help stabilize those threads. If you want even more stiffness, you can go and use starch. And the magic sizing, I actually just give my fabrics a little bit of a spray as I'm ironing. I don't soak it in the starch. And the only time I use the magic sizing is when I am going to be working with a bias edge. If I know I'm going to be cutting my fabric on the bias and sewing a bias edge, this is where I like to pre-treat my fabrics with the magic sizing. If I'm only cutting squares and rectangles, I don't worry about it. I just use it straight off the bolt. Now, if you are working with pre-cuts, for example, like charm packs, layer cakes, jelly rolls, and such, I actually encourage you to open the pack up and actually press every single piece before you start cutting it, because those pieces are just like your fabric off the bolt. It has not been pressed, and so those fibers are going to realign, and if you cut your fabrics before you press them, you could end up with a little bit smaller pieces. Your fabrics will kind of change on you a little bit. So the better idea is to press everything before you cut it. The first thing to consider in cutting are your tools. And rulers are, of course, a major component. I like to use Creative Grids rulers, as you may imagine, because not only because of their accuracy, I like it because they have the built-in grip on the backside, so you are certain that your rulers are not going to move on your fabrics. Of course, I love the Stripology rulers because the accuracy of those slits is ideal for cutting your units. So you can be sure that when you're cutting your strips or subcutting your squares and rectangles, every single one is going to be the same size. Another factor to consider is your cutting mat. I prefer a cutting mat that is stable, and you should just always check the surface of your cutting mats, because there are some out there that have a very slippery surface. So when you place your fabric on that surface and are going to align a ruler on top, that fabric is going to slide around and give you less stability. So just test your mats, and I like to use ones that are, first of all, self-healing and have a nice kind of grippy texture to it. Another thing to consider regarding cutting mats, and I know you can't see it on this mat, and that is the lines that are on your mat. If you prefer rulers that have white and black lines like the Creative Grids rulers, I wouldn't choose a mat that has lines in those colors, white or black, because that is going to be really confusing when you're using the rulers to measure. When you're measuring, other than the Stripology rulers, there's always that question where you place your lines on your fabrics. And what you want to do when cutting with regular rulers, instead of lining that line at the edge of your fabric, make sure that line just goes slightly on top of your fabric without seeing the edge of your fabric on the other side of the line, and then make your cuts. What's beautiful about the Stripology rulers is that when we cut even just one square, I always start by going through the 0, so that gives us that clean edge and positions our fabric perfectly for that one square or that one rectangle. So we don't need to worry about where we're placing that line on the fabric. Now then we move it on to our cutting tools, our cutters. You can use whatever cutter works for you, and I always say, you know, whatever you're used to, use that. However, one thing that comes into effect regarding our accuracy is, of course, our blade. We need to change our blade on a regular basis, and there's not really a time or anything to change when it's time to change your blade, but once you feel that your cutter is not going smoothly through 4 layers of fabric, or at least there's some nicks in it when you make a cut and your fabric is hanging together, then it's time to switch out your blade, and you will notice a greatly improved accuracy in your cutting by just changing your blade. So then we're moving on to our sewing. Thread choice can impact your accuracy. You want a fine yet strong thread, and Aurifil is my favorite. I like to use a 50 weight thread because it's nice and fine for piecing, so it melts nicely into the fabric, and then as you press it, it gets the fabric to fold over very nicely. So that is my favorite and my preference. Along with your thread, your sewing machine needle comes into effect as well. So I like to use a Microtex needle or a Sharps needle. They are much sharper than any universal needles, and so they will penetrate that fabric much nicer and leave a lesser hole in your fabric and not pull on any fibers. So that will greatly improve your accuracy. And remember, you need to switch out those needles. Even though they last and last and last, they will lose their sharpness. And so I always recommend changing those needles out on a regular basis. Again, you can't really tell when is a good time. I usually go by how much I've been sewing on that particular machine, and then just give it a fresh new needle. Now, seam allowance. Seam allowance, of course, is our major component, and we always, in piecing, we want a scant 1/4 inch seam. Now, what is a scant 1/4 inch seam? A scant 1/4 inch seam means that you sew your seam, and then after you've pressed that seam to one side, that is going to be a 1/4 inch accurate measurement. And how to achieve that perfect 1/4 inch seam or a scant 1/4 inch seam? I always recommend getting a 1/4 inch foot for your machine, but they are as different as they are many for the many different machines. So there are some that have a thinner front, wider back, some are thin all the way, and then some will have a flange guide on each side, on the side of the foot that you're supposed to guide your fabric up against to get that perfect 1/4 inch seam. But I'll tell you this, do not trust your 1/4 inch foot without measuring it or measuring that seam on it. So in that case, I actually always recommend using a seam guide to check your 1/4 inch seam, because I have learned that between all my 1/4 inch feet, I am still aligning the fabric in different places just based on that seam guide. So this is the seam guide from Perkins Dry Goods that I actually really recommend using. And this is how you use it. I'm going to bring it over to my featherweight here. So that seam guide has a hole here that you are going to put your needle through. So I'm just going to guide it underneath my machine Find that hole and stick that needle right through the hole. Now the needle is through the hole, and I want to make sure that the seam guide is straight. And then I'm going to put my foot down. And as you can see, that seam guide is acting as my fabric. So this is where my fabric should be positioned, exactly going under the foot. And this particular 1/4 inch foot, that edge is a little bit inside of that edge of the foot. So if I were to guide my fabric on the outside of this foot, it would be a needle width or two too wide of a seam. So this is why I used some things to, I like to use my ruler stickers to just align, to mark where that fabric should be guided. I'm also making a mental note on where my fabric should always hit as I'm sewing on that foot. So you can test that, your 1/4 inch foot, with a guide like this, because everyone is going to be different, and this is going to make the biggest difference in your accuracy going forward. So after we get our seam perfect, the next step is our pressing. So as we press, again, I like to use steam when I am pressing, but that is a personal preference. So you can do all the same techniques with a dry iron. For most of my patterns, I prefer to press to one side because I like to nest seams. So, but when I'm pressing with my steam, you always want to make sure that you fold your fabric out first and use your fingers to push that seam out as much as you can. I never recommend pressing from the back side of the fabric because that is always going to leave some creases in your seams on the front. So always press from the front side of your fabric, push that seam out with your fingers, and then just move your iron along across that seam. Do not push that seam out with your iron because that can cause some stretching and distorting of that seam. Now, as I said before, I like to press my seams to each side, so as I'm putting together a block, I can nest all those seams and make everything fit nicely. There are cases though where I do press my seams open, where there are so many seams coming together and there's just absolutely no way to press to one side. So this will make everything lay down much flatter. And so in very few cases, I do like to press seams open. So after you have perfected your 1/4 inch seam and align things right on your machine, then it's time to test your 1/4 inch seam. And I've seen so many cases where people have tested their seam by just sewing 2 pieces together, grabbing a ruler and measuring that seam. But that's not enough. What we need to do is actually measure our piece after you have pressed it. So what I recommend doing, I usually cut a 1.5 inch little strips, just little scraps. I sew 3 of them together and press them. And I always recommend when you're sewing 3 pieces together, sew 2 together first, press that seam, and then add the 3rd piece and then press that. And then once you have these pressed out to each side, then you're going to go ahead and measure that middle strip. So I'm going to show you using my ruler. I'm going to just lay the 1 inch lines on the ruler right on those 2 seams, and they should be aligned exactly on those seams. If you can see that it's a little bit on the inside or the outside, then you know how you can adjust your seam by either moving your needle over or just adjusting where you're aligning your fabric on your foot. But this is the best way to test your seam and to really see if you have a perfect scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. Another thing to look into as far as our accuracy, and that is when we are doing something where we're not using a 1/4 inch seam, but we are maybe drawing a line and then stitching on that line and folding the corners out, doing typical folded corners. So let's check that out. Here I have a square that I'm putting on a rectangle. I have drawn a line, and this I'm supposed to sew on that line, trim my seam allowance, and then fold my fabric out this way. One thing that really helps when you're doing these kinds of units is as you sew, you draw your line, and then as you sew, I hope this is close enough. Maybe we should move it over to the machine so you can see it. But as I draw the line, I'm actually not going to stitch right on the line. I'm stitching to the side of the line. So let's just imagine I drew that line with a pen, and then I'm just drawing another line with my stitches, but I'm drawing it right next to the line and not on top of it. And I'm doing that on the side that is going to get trimmed off. So the stitches come on the side of the line, and this makes it so much easier to just fold over the fabric, and then this way you will get a much straighter unit. And then you trim that from behind, and that just little extra needle width over is going to help that fabric fold over nicely, and you're going to bring it to the corner perfectly. Now the last thing I want to mention is when we are sewing two units together and you want to match seams, and sometimes we have a whole lot of seams that we need to match, and as I told you before, I like to nest my seams. So in all my patterns I give you pressing instructions so that you can do that. However, there's another feature that you want to add to that process if you are, especially when you're just starting out, and that is you want to pin those intersections. You lay these units together and you want to pin these intersections. So you want to pin them straight across from where you're sewing. Pinning things this way could still cause that top layer to shift. So you want to make sure that you nest those seams and pin across the direction that you're sewing, and you want to maybe pin all the intersections of the seams that you want to nest and match up perfectly. And pins are not all created equal either. I like to use pins that are extra sharp, thinner, for especially when I'm measuring things like that. And one of my favorites are the Clover silk pins because they are very fine and they slip through the fabric very easily. This is different from what I'd be using for other things, but for piecing accuracy, I like those small silk pins that will just slide through easily. So that is all of our little tidbits, all of the little tidbits that have helped me throughout. I'm sure there are many more, and maybe you have more to share, but I hope some of these things will come into mind when you are doing your piecing and maybe help you along the way. Thank you for watching. Watching your comments and trying to answer your questions, and thank you to all of you that were really quick to answer some of the questions. You even got to it way before me, so thank you all. I did see we had quite a few questions come up. One question was, do you sell the titanium rotary blades in your shop? I have not tried the titanium one. We sell the endurance blades by Alpha. I don't believe that they are full titanium. They are just supposed to last longer. The one thing I would like to try before I always dive into purchasing something for my store, I'd like to try things myself. The only thing I would be a little hesitant about to see, and I don't know this for sure, but I wouldn't want the titanium blades to ruin my mat. So sometimes when you're using really a different material, and you probably know this, you should never use those knives, like the what are they called? The little knives they use for paper and stuff. You should never use that on your mats because they're so sharp, they go so deep into your mats, stuff like that. Do you set your seam first? Yes, I do. So I have actually done a pressing video in a later Tipsy Tuesday. It was like either earlier this year or late last year. And I showed you how to spin seams and everything like that. And I showed you, I always set seams first. I don't know why I didn't do that in that particular video, because I was just too focused on showing you how you should really use your fingers and not your iron to push out the seam. But yes, I always set the seam first, which means you have your piece that you have already sewn ready to be pressed. You set it first and then you open it up, use your fingers, and just go straight across. When you press your seams open, do you still press on the right side of the fabrics? No. So if you're going to press a seam open, you need to turn it over and you need to really be able to push it apart so it really spreads out. So it just takes a long time, which is one of the reasons why I'm not a fan. But also I love to nest seams, so I will try to avoid opening seams, but I do it when there's a lot of seams coming together, and especially those blocks that I was showing you, they're smaller blocks, so you really want things to lay flat And so that's why I did it when I do it. With the Perkins seam guide, is the hole where you put the needle a scant 1/4 inch? Yes, and that's why I love it. And it's not like many other guides, there are multiple different holes. And so, but because it's a perfect scant 1/4 inch. So where you put it, that's exactly, it should be acting like your fabric. And so I use it all the time. When I traveled and taught, I used to always have one to try with folks' machines and to put their guides. And somebody just actually commented that I made everybody do a test strip, 1.5 inch strip. And it's just so important sometimes, especially when you go to classes, because I always tell people, we sometimes just use our class machine and bring out a machine that you don't normally use on a regular everyday basis. So then it's really important to check it every time. Are you standing or sitting and help? Oh, this is about, I think this was an answer to a question about cutting with a stripology ruler. Yeah, so you really need to be on top of it. So cutting height for me, I'm 5'3", so counter height is too high for me. So counter height, I think it's usually like 36 inches. And it's a little too high. I'm more like a 33 to 34 was ideal height for me to cut at. So you should really think about that when you are, figuring out where to cut. Yes, you maybe don't want to be on a regular table, but bring it up. And if you only have a counter height to cut on, maybe you can just have a little, piece of wood or a thick mat, or put on some running shoes that have an inch heel on them. And it really makes a huge difference. What size needle do you use to piece? I use a 80, exactly, 80 or size 12, 80. That's what I use on most things I do. I have used a 75, I have used a 90, and so, I mean, if you don't have something, I've sometimes had to just make do, and it's okay, but my preference is the 80. The 75 is very nice and fine, but the eye gets a little tiny especially when you're working. I'm working with my vintage machines that I have to actually thread them. What size is your rotary cutter? I remember that could impact how deep you can cut, which could be the issue. Yes, of course. So I always encourage you, if you're working with the stripology rulers, watch the Stripology 101 videos. I have 6 or 7 different ones with all the different rulers, and the first one and second one are in particular really about kind of all the troubleshooting. It's about, so when you're cutting with the stripology rulers, you pull your blade back, and so you need to be looking at what amount of blade you have, because we're cutting through the ruler, through the fabric down to the cutting mat. We're not just on the edge of a ruler. So your angle of your cutter really matters. If you have a straight handle cutter, if you have an ergonomic cutter, it would be a different angle, because you have to look at where the widest part of your blade is and make sure that that's what is angled correctly, so you can go through all those layers and your ruler is not stopping on your cutter. And actually the different types of cutters, not necessarily a 60 millimeter cutter is not necessarily always great, because depending on the brand, sometimes a 60 millimeter blade, you pull the blade guard back and there's still just a tiny bit of blade showing. So just make sure you check it. And if you go to a quilt shop, I'm sure they can give you all kinds of recommendations and maybe even see how much blade gets exposed. All right. How do you clean a self-healing mat? So every time after you have done a whole cutting session, this is what I do with all of my mats. So after you cut out a whole project, I always make sure to clean off all the little threads. So it depends on your fabrics. It depends on how fresh your blade is, how much little threads go into those slivers that you cut. And I'm sure we've all experienced it. You should never use your good cutting mat for cutting flannel or minky or anything that's really hairy, or batting, because it really sticks in the grooves. But regardless, after I cut out a whole project, I clean it really well. I always have just a double stick roller, lint roller, and I roll everything out to get all the lint out. And if there's still stuff in the grooves, I actually just have a little one of those pads that you use to scrub pots, but not the abrasive ones, to really kind of go over it and get it out. Or sometimes I just use my finger or even a piece of fabric to rub over it, and make sure you get everything out, because your mat won't heal if it's full of threads, if the cuts are full of threads. So that is what I do. If you do it after every time you cut out a project, it will last you a long time. We have to treat them just like anything else. How do you define press? So press as opposed to ironing. So I don't really ever iron anything because I don't iron clothes. Ironing is for clothes. Ironing is like this. And yes, I may sometimes iron my fabric before I cut it, but as I get into piecing and quilting, we're going to press. So that means we fold our seam out and just press. So we're not pushing the fabric around. Make sense? Pressing with starch, good or not? So I'd say make sure if you're going to starch or do any kind of treatment on your fabrics, make sure it's super dry before you start pressing it. So you have to spray it, make it dry. It's different if you have just a mister with water or anything, and sometimes it's really good to get creases out of your fabric. That's a whole different thing. But if you're pressing like blocks and stuff, you never want to do that with a wet piece of fabric. So you want it to fully dry before you do any of that. All right. Any other questions? When I cut multiple layers with your rulers, I sometimes have little bends in my strip. Yes, I can help with that. So that is actually explained in the first Stripology 101 video. Because we have two folds, we have to fold our fabric into fourths. You have your bolt fold, you fold it over your selvages, so then you have a fold on the top, and now you have another fold on the bottom. In order for your strips to be completely straight without any elbows, those two folds have to be perfectly parallel. So I describe it in the video. I do my fold, I layer, I align a line, horizontal line on my ruler on my bottom fold, and then I check my top fold to see if it's straight. Because you can see it, even though it doesn't land on a line, you can see it if it's going like this or like this. And if it's really crooked, I remove my ruler, I refold it to adjust it, and I check it again until I'm happy with it, and you got two folds that are parallel. That's the only thing that matters when you're cutting strips with the Stripology rulers in order to get straight strips. So then, of course, when you're cutting, it really matters to keep that horizontal line on that bottom fold to make sure everything gets straight. Do you ever tear your fabric to make sure you're cutting on the straighter grain? I do not, because most times when we're quilting, we are cutting all kinds of pieces. I mean, very rarely do I do, of course, but rarely do I do a quilt that's just perfectly rectangular or square pieces. So sometimes we're cutting them on the diagonal, we're making half square triangles, we're turning them all kinds of ways in a quilt. So you're not going to get a whole quilt top that's going to be perfectly on the straighter grain all throughout. So normally if you take your fabric from the quilt shop and you give it a good steam press, all those fibers are going to align. So when you fold it again, I usually create my own bolt fold after doing that, just so I align my selvages. And then I fold it. You will see sometimes it crooks up, but as long as you square it up, you're pretty much on the straighter grain. It's close. It's close enough usually, because we're not, unless you're doing woven, like thinly woven fabrics, like homespuns or something like that, using muslin, I wouldn't worry about it, because the quality of our quilt shop quality fabrics are just a whole different level. All right, would you use a 90 needle for flannel? I usually don't change my needle for flannel. I don't think it really matters. You just want a sharp needle for flannel and anything. And so don't ever hesitate to change your needles. So if you start hearing, and this is something that, you know, we all know, we love our sewing machines. So we love them so much. So if they start talking to you differently, you know, if you hear that extra little sound, and sometimes you hear it, the needle. If it punches, if it's making a sound when it punches the fabric, your needle is way dull. So then you need to swap the needle. And you know what? It happens. Sometimes out of the package, you get a dull needle. It's happened to me. So you can hear it. So listen to your machine. They talk to you. What about the Sew Steady? Do they improve accuracy and the quarter seam? Okay, Sew Steady. Are we talking about the Sew Steady tables? I don't really know what you're talking about. Maybe it's a product that I don't know about or I can't think about. You know, when I'm doing my live shows, it's really hard to think outside the box. I got an agenda and I got a live audience and questions. So sometimes I don't remember names. It happens a lot. So I'm not sure. I've only heard of the Sew Steady sewing tables. Or are we talking about something else? So just comment again and maybe we'll figure it out. What is a Perkins seam guide? I've never heard of it. So it's this little piece of acrylic. It's like a little yellow ruler. I showed it in the video, and we do carry it. I carry it in the store. I've been selling it since I was before my website because it's just a beautiful thing. My friend Celine Perkins designed it, and it just makes it so easy. Really makes it so easy. I always say if you travel, if you go to, retreats or guild meetings to sew and stuff, make sure you put one of these in your little sewing kit, because if you have to sew on a different machine, you can always figure out your scant 1/4 inch. And I have to talk about this a little bit because I always get asked, should I use a scant 1/4 inch here with this pattern or not? Here's the deal. You should always use a scant 1/4 inch, whether it's my patterns, anybody else's patterns. A scant 1/4 inch just means it's a thread or two less than a perfect quarter, so that fabric has room to fold over. So you should always, when you're piecing, be piecing with a scant 1/4 inch. So many people think that scant 1/4 inch is a lot less than a full 1/4 inch. It's not. It's just a term that we use so that when you piece and you measure everything, you have a perfect 1/4 inch. You see what I'm saying? So I think that term scant 1/4 inch confuses people a lot. It's still, we have to use it. Do you starch flannel and increase the seam allowance? I don't increase the seam allowance because flannel, what type of flannel I prefer to use is a good quality flannel as well. So it's quilt shop quality. So they are, you can see that they have a larger thread count than possibly if you get maybe flannel solids. You can see the difference. Flannel sheets, you can see the difference. So I don't increase my seam allowance. I stick with my 1/4 inch just so that all patterns work. Different, what was the other question? Was it different needle? I usually actually just use the same. So the only things that you have to really think about with flannel, and maybe that's a whole show really, is that you want to choose simpler patterns. You want to choose patterns that don't have a whole lot of seams coming together in it, so that you don't have those really bulky seams, because each seam is going to be bulkier. So you have to choose something simpler and possibly with bigger pieces. It doesn't mean I've still done quilts with flannel that are smaller pieces. It's just harder. It's just a little bit harder. What is the best size and the rulers should a beginner use? The Stripology rulers, I always say start with the XL unless you have smaller spaces. Then I'd say maybe the squared ruler if you don't have a large sewing space, but otherwise the XL is going to be the best bang for your buck, because you have the features of the squared, you have all the slits to cut out kind of your workhorse and cutting out a whole quilt. And it does have the diagonal lines going both ways, 60 degree and 45 degree. So it does a lot. It really does a lot. All right, precise measurement of the scant 1/4 inch. It's a 1/4 inch less 1 or 2 strands of thread or needle widths, something like that. We're not going to do an accurate measurement on that. But of course, even though you get this perfect scant 1/4 inch seam, it still matters how you press things. You know what I'm saying? Because you can still leave some fabric in those creases. So all of those things go into play. What is the theme of the new book? I can't wait. I think I've said it before. It's going to be the same as my previous book, the Stripology Mixology. So this is going to be Mixology too. So lots of new patterns using all the different pre-cuts, and some of them more than one in one quilt. Yes. All right. Do you have any idea when sheep fabric will be in? Like I said before, we're told October. We're keeping our fingers crossed. I haven't gotten a shipment, like nothing is set in stone until I get that shipment notification. And sometimes it's like, whoop, whoop, on that day when I get that email that I have a package coming. How is the new warehouse going? It's going amazing. Day 2, we are fully in the new place. Of course, it's not pretty yet, but it's functional. We shipped out of it yesterday and today, and couple of glitches with technology, but we worked it all out and we're getting a flow. Everybody's getting a flow. So once I pretty it up a little bit more, I want to hang, of course, a bunch of quilts and stuff. So I'll take a bunch of pictures and we'll share it actually probably next week. But how are we doing? Any more questions? I wanted to show you, so the add-on to this. How are we doing on time? We're good on time. So the add-on to this, I wanted to talk about one thing. Somebody was making my Hekla quilt from the Iceland book in the crew and was posting pictures, and her block was not turning up. So all of those things that I talked about in this video will matter to that, and especially with a quilt like Hekla. So I think I talked about it in the video. I only starch or use best press or magic sizing on my fabrics if I know that I'll be cutting things on the bias or sewing things on the bias. Hekla would be an absolute yes. I would do it to that. So for example, I just want to show you a little trick. So Hekla, I'm going to show you on the overhead here what the block looks like. So this is a block. It's in my Iceland book. And I really wanted to create this kind of a Nordic star where the pieces did not have a seam through them. Like a lot of people have done this block and there's always a seam through the middle here. But I wanted to do it without the seam. So it comes together in a kind of a cool way. So you make these units that look like this. You have a rectangle and then fabric triangle you sew here, and then you trim it. So you should have a flat tip here. But of course, when you press these things, you have to be really careful of not distorting it so this angle is correct. So then you actually sew a strip between two mirror image units. You sew a strip to one of them, and then you press that, as like I said in the video, always when you're adding something on each side, you want to add one, press, and then add the other. So you add one, but before you add the other, you actually go ahead and trim this even. And this is a very important step, because if you don't trim, it's really hard to figure out where the other piece goes. And still, when you, because in the pattern, I believe I just tell you to center it on here, and you want this kind of to match up over here, right? Because you want this to kind of to line up like this. And so here's a little trick. So I would kind of look at it, okay, this seems semi-centered, semi-straight across here. So I will kind of fold this over, and I believe I showed you this, especially, oh, it was in the, when we did the Marina sew along. It's a little bit of a trick here. So I have this folded over, and I think I'm correct, and you can also see here if it's centered. But here's a little trick. So I can lift this up, flip it over, and fold this over so that these things come together, and I can see how that seam, if they are matching exactly, if it was off, it would be showing up like this. You see, so I'm looking at this seam and it's not matching up with this. So this is way off. So then I can just adjust, check again until I'm happy with them meeting exactly like this. And then I pin it and then I sew it on. And of course, our favorite tip ever, the bob, is gonna make sense here because this piece is on the bias. The other strip is not, so I want to sew it this way. So then after that, after this one is sewn on, you will have this weird tip here, which you just square up to a perfect square. So that's how that block comes together. But that tip is really, really nice to use whenever you have a strip between two things that need to kind of match up across the strip. That's a great thing, great little tip to use. And so if you want to learn more about that, check out the Marina Sew Along. You can always see all of the Tipsy Tuesday episodes on my website. If you go to the videos, go to Tipsy Tuesdays, it lists all the episodes I've done, 72 of them, with the topic in each episode. So if you want to find something that I thought I saw this one time, go through there and click on it. It takes you directly to that video. The other thing I wanted to share, just because I've gotten some comments of people having trouble with accuracy on when they're squaring up using the Stripology Squared or the mini ruler. And so mainly because they feel like the lines are so thick that you're not going to get good accuracy. Well, let me explain that. So I have this block here, just an hourglass block, and that I just whipped up earlier. So I'm going to square this to 9 inches. So I have my 9-inch square aligned here, and of course that's black. So I'm going to use black diagonal lines to line up on my seams. And this actually, I chose to just make an hourglass block because the Sabrina quilt that you saw behind me is just made of hourglass blocks. So then what I want to do is I want to line up this diagonal seams right on the seam. But here's the deal with when you're squaring up any kind of block. You want to think about what are the seams that are going to be really important to be on. And of course, a lot of people are always trying to match the center, but the center is not going to be coming together with anything. Nobody's going to know if this is perfectly centered. What's really going to matter is that these seams on the 4 outer edges, that they are accurate and lined up, because when we're piecing it next to something else, we want that to match, right? This already looks like it's matched, so whether it's perfectly centered or not, nobody's ever going to notice. So I always focus on, when I'm doing hourglass blocks, I focus on trying to get that dotted line as close to all 4 seams as possible. And if you can't get them right on, ooh, look at that, I was able to get them right on. If you can't get them right on, then you want to just split the difference so they're even, evenly off everywhere. So now I have them lined up here, and that's all good. I'm going to make my 2 cuts, and then I turn it to do the other sides. And this is where I've gotten questions on how to be accurate, and the thick lines are giving them trouble, because now you want to use the 9-inch line and the 0 line to line up with these 2 sides, but still you also want to use the dotted lines on the 4 seam. So now I have the dotted lines on the 4 seams, but the question I get, should I be using, because these lines are thick, should I be using the bottom of the line, middle of the line, or the top of the line to line up with the edge of the block? Well, here's the thing. It doesn't really matter what you use, because we are going to be cutting this way. So whether you line it on the bottom or on the top, these are not going to get altered. These cuts are not going to get altered. So, which is why we wanted to have the thicker lines, just so you can see them better, because it doesn't affect the accuracy. Do you understand what I'm saying? So now I just make my 2 cuts, and I was focused on the 4 corners, and look at that. Did anyone notice that this center is not perfectly in the middle? I don't think so. It was close enough. And these 4 corners are good, so we're good to go. So that's kind of what my whole philosophy is. Work smarter, not harder. Don't worry about the center if it really doesn't matter in the end. We're just going to focus on the outside. And you will see that throughout my patterns, no matter what you're doing. I always kind of let you focus on the things that really do matter in the end. All right, any questions on this? Some? Yeah? Okay, good. Well, if we don't have any specific questions on all of that, I thought I should acknowledge what you've all been staring at this whole show, my new shirt. So we finally have all the shirts in. So we have, I should stand up just to show you this one. So these are the long sleeve. We have them in 3 colors. And so they're nice and kind of loose. They're fitted. They kind of go over your behind a little bit. And so I'm wearing a medium, so I like it a little bit loose, because I'm a kind of a bustier. I don't know what if you should say that on TV or not. But I like it loose. Probably I would be wearing a small if it wasn't for COVID, if you know what I mean. But it's nice to have it nice and loose, and it lays flat. So the reason I chose this shirt, you might have seen me wear the gray one during our sew-alongs. So no, wait, we'll wait on the short sleeve. I'm going to talk about the long sleeve first. So we have the, yeah, that's the color that I'm wearing now. So, but this is the gray one that I was wearing for the sew-alongs for Hope, I believe, and Harmony. So they're really, I like these sleeves. On the end, they are just loose like this. There's no cuff. And you'll see the bottom is just a serged, nice bottom, so you can easily tuck them in. It's not going to get bulky. But my favorite part about these is the softness. So it is a blend. It's not full cotton, so it won't shrink on you. It's super, super soft and light and comfy. And even if it's long sleeve, I know those of you are like, we're in a hot climate. But these are so lightweight. So it's not, they're so comfortable. So we have the gray and the watermelon that I'm wearing. And then we have the royal blue. or actually this is just the regular blue. Yeah, really pretty blue. And we have them in sizes from small to 4X. And so these are the long sleeve. Then we have the short sleeve, and I picked these really cool, this really cool fit. That's very flattering. So a little bit longer sleeve, so it goes kind of down, kind of to here. You'll see me wearing these. And so we chose this kind of cranberry color, and then the royal blue. So the short sleeves are in 2 colors, but all the same sizes. But you can see the bottom, it's a little bit rounded, like shown in the picture. Of course, the colors are different. They're going to be richer than what the photo shows you. So maybe on camera, this is a little more red than it actually is. So yeah, the bottom is rounded. And so, and then on the back, there's just the website, but that's it. So what I wanted to tell you about these, I ordered a bunch of sizes, and it was really hard when you're trying to sell apparel, is you order all these sizes and then always half of them sit because it's not the sizes that are the most popular. So I just ordered a small initial order for all the different sizes, and trying to guess what was going to be hot. But I made a deal with the printer, which is local to me. So I am going to see the first orders come in and place another order based on kind of what sizes are most popular and what colors are most popular. And so the first orders that come in for these shirts are going to probably be shipped out as early as tomorrow. And if you order a little bit later, your order will still go out within a week or 2. Just know that. And I just don't want to sit with a warehouse full of shirts that nobody wants. So I want to kind of figure out what is the most popular colors, sizes, and styles and all of that. So I hope you understand that. It's like, I don't even understand how apparel companies do that, but I think many of them are printing on demand. So these are sort of printing on demand, although we do have quite a bit of inventory on most sizes right now. So very excited. I know you've been waiting for it. And yeah, I wore mine all day. And you know what great part? So I've been working with fabric. There's actually not that much. You didn't want to show my shirt? There's some threads, but they are easy to pick off from this. So they don't like really stick to you like a lot, which is a great thing. And this color hides it really well, at least that color fabric. Yeah, so now you're official. Whoop, whoop, everybody. Show it with pride and wear it to the grocery store and make everybody do a double, triple take.
Most importantly,
they don't know who you are because you're wearing a mask anyway.
For the guys.
There will be some stuff for the guys. Just hold off. Somebody got very offended that I was just thinking about the ladies first. But let me tell you this too. Us ladies know, and you guys do know too, that finding a right fit for the ladies that's flattering, but yet nice and loose and comfy is a challenge sometimes. So
I do understand that most guys won't wear a shirt that says I'm a stripologist.
Oh, really? We have a lot of members in our crew that are men, so I think they would wear it. I think you would wear it.
I would.
Yeah. You would support. You know, it's fun. So very excited about that. And we have some new stuff, of course, in the store. Do we have any questions on the shirts? I know there are some questions. Are the shirts on the website? Yes, they are on the website. They're not 100% cotton. They are a mix. They're a blend because so they won't shrink. They are really soft. So they have a poly. I think the long sleeve are a poly. We put it all in the description if you want to read it. So it's a poly, cotton, and a little bit of rayon in these because it just has a really nice feel to them. And I've washed mine quite a few times, and it really washes well, doesn't shrink at all, does not wrinkle either, so it's great.
Someone said they don't see the shirts on the website.
Huh?
Someone said they don't see the shirts on the website.
Oh, it's under apparel. If it's not live, I will fix it right after the show, so you can go back and check it out. So yeah, you should check that out. And these are different shirts that we've had before. So the black shirts that we used to have that says I'm a stripologist, they were 100% cotton. And one of the reasons I've used mine so many times and washed it so many times, so they kind of wear. So that's why I wanted to find something different that was more comfortable, washed better, and I'm going to be wearing this all winter long. I'm just going to tell you right now. Any other questions? Any questions on YouTube that are coming up? All right, if you're not finding them on the website, don't worry. I will make it all work right after the show. I can't do it while we are live. Do they pill? No, I have not noticed this. Like I said, I got my first one in April, and so I've worn it quite a few times. And so far, I would say I probably washed it at least 8 to 10 times. I don't see it pill at all. So, and I also kind of consulted with my friend that does the printing for him, and she really kind of picked shirts that she loves herself and has sold a lot of. So that's what I chose. All right. Oh, they just showed up on the website. Okay, good. All right, great. First thing I wanted to show you, I sewed something because sometimes it's been, especially with us moving. Remember when I showed you in the last episode of matchmaking, I think it was last show or the show before, I was matching things with the Squirrely Girl charm pack. And I love that so much because I just love the soft fall colors, and it's like really not, orange in your face. It's really soft and pretty and really kind of controlled colorway. And I was matching accent fabric to it, or background fabrics. And I was showing you all the different browns, and we found a perfect one, but then I found another one was even better. So I switched, but I made a Clara table runner out of a charm pack and some accent fabric. So not quilted yet, so it's just a top, but how fun. It's really cute. And so the accent fabric I used is actually circle burst in, I believe it's chocolate or dark chocolate, or I don't remember the color name, but we have it in stock, and it's one of our basics, so we will be restocking it if it's not. But I thought it just turned out super cute. Then Clara is one of those cut loose press patterns. So just a single sheet, very good price point that I designed for cut loose press to go with a mini ruler. So very fun to do. All right, we got some new fabric too. One of our pre-orders, Daybreak, came in, and it's just always so much fun to see fabrics in person. So I know I've shown you this before, but I just wanted to real quick show you because I know many of you just love seeing the overall. So I love this main fabric. It's all these beautiful birds. So that's the main print. Let me put it up here. And then we have, so it's really a traditional fabric line by Three Sisters from Moda. But what I love about this, I kind of chose the more modern colorway. So these beautiful grays, love these paisleys, and paired with the navy, and we got the birds again in that big print in the navy, and we had to have one stripe, of course, and then we have these kind of light blue aqua tone to this colorway, which I love. And then I had to pull out all that gold. So we have 3 gold fabrics to kind of balance everything out really nicely. So there's 14 pieces in this, but we also got the charm packs. So the charm pack is, of course, the full line. This is the bundle that I curated. The full line has more colors in it. It does have, of course, more prints in each color. It has more lights because I eliminated the lights out of here. It has pink. And then some more of those lights, those low volume fabrics. So those are available. So great to whip up a runner if you know somebody that really loves kind of more traditional with a little bit of a twist. You can make so many fun things with it. So that is now not a pre-order anymore. And if you pre-ordered, your order went out today. So you should be getting it real soon. All right. So then we have another fun line from Endover, and this is only a 9-piece bundle. So I want to tell you about this collection. It's called the Endover Collective, and what they did is they had put together prints from most of the Endover designers. And if you know Endover, they have some very traditional designers and very modern designers. And that's kind of what I love about this mix. So I chose 9 prints out of the line. I think the line is bigger, but I just loved mixing the more modern prints. This is by Libs Elliott. I think these are from very traditional, almost kind of, what should I say, Civil War-ish, but I just love the colorway of this. And then we have, this one's by Juicy Juice. And then this one is from Edita. And another one from Libs Elliott. But I just love the mixing of it. So if you're ever afraid of mixing something that's super traditional with modern, don't ever be afraid. You know, there's no rules. It's just fun. But I love these vibrant colors. They're mostly tone on tones and these fun prints. I just love the mix of it. So just a small collection, small bundle, 9 pieces, but it really is fun. And I just a variety of scale, variety of prints, a really fun idea by Endover that I really appreciated, doing something totally different. Then I wanted to show you, we got this panel that I absolutely love London. I don't know if I told you that, but it's these big panels. They call them pillow panels from Riley Blake, but it's 4 different panels, 4 different types, all London, England. So you could totally incorporate it in a quilt. I could totally see it on the back of a quilt, or really cool pillows for like a modern household, somebody that loves London. And I just think these are so fun. They're really, really well done and just different because they're kind of larger scale. So they are, this is the width of the fabric. So you could do a pillow or a wall hanging, obviously, that's almost 20 by 17 or so, the width of each one. And everybody's hearing Kobe because somebody's coming home. The other thing that came into, we restocked a lot of the 1 yards for the rainbow shimmer fabrics. These are just 3 of them. We have, I believe 6 or 7 different ones. The butterflies are really popular, the hearts and stars, and then we have the buttons, and then we have a really fun black rainbow stripe that's really cool to use for binding. So that's what I'm going to be adding to the 1 yards a lot, is like stripes. If I see a cool stripe or a cool diagonal plaid to use for bindings and stuff, I will add that to our 1 yards. So that's back in stock. Check that out. And also we have the rainbows. This was rainbow. Oh, rainbow shimmer. I get so confused with all this rainbow stuff. This is rainbow what? This is rainbow sprinkles. The rainbow shimmer is what I showed you last episode that has the metallic. And so we have now 12 colors in 1 yards for the rainbow shimmer. God. Can you all fabric designers stop naming your fabrics rainbow something, because it's very confusing. Okay, we have one more bundle that came in that's really cool, very controlled colorway. This one is called Heritage by My Mind's Eye for Riley Blake. And so it's got, the main print has kind of all the different countries and heritages. You know, I would think, you know, Japan, China, Italy, France, Austria. Unfortunately, I can't find, it's not to scale because Mexico is right by Brazil and then Spain is connected to it. So it doesn't make any sense, but it's more about the heritage, I think. But I just really love the print. So, and this colorway. So this is kind of a, almost, it's a gray, but it has a lot of blue in it, almost like a tealish gray. And then it has this type print and a little bit of a graph paper print. And I love this floral and kind of a wood grain, but different. I love this colorway. So then we have the floral again in the black. It's more charcoal. The wood grain, the graph, and the type. And then this print is really pretty. And then, of course, we had to have the plaid in there. And then the other colorway of the main print. So this is our heritage collection. So very neutral, but that hint of greenish blue in here, you could pair it with so many cool things. So I love that. Really cool, modern, but mixed. Like I like the modern feel with a little bit of a traditional floral in there. Just a lovely mix of textures and fun stuff. So that is all the new stuff that we've gotten in and is already in the store, all cut in the warehouse and bagged and everything. So it's all just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we're doing great. We're loving it so far. All right, so winner. You got a winner? Ready? We got a winner. Our first winner of the show, Denise Groseth Ratslaff. I'm sorry, I probably butchered your name, Denise, but congratulations. You've won a $25 gift card. And so we will either try and get a hold of you. If you're seeing this, make sure you contact us through either Facebook, if you're on Facebook. If not, send me an email, gudrun@quiltdesigns.com, and we'll get you your $25 gift card. Before I end, I wanted to just share a little sneak peek. So the reason why I kind of was touching base on all of these little accuracy things and wanted us to all start doing a little checkup on our accuracy and improving it is everybody wants to get to their best piecing, right? So there will be a new fun group project coming up real soon that you can take part in. So kind of a sew along, but with a different twist. So we will have, of course, a reason to celebrate our grand opening in the warehouse, so the new warehouse / office space. And of course, we'll have some specials and some new releases. So stay tuned for more info during our next Tipsy Tuesday. So you don't want to miss next week. Don't want to miss next week. Big announcement. So looking forward to that. And of course, next week, that's when we will be, our next Tipsy Tuesday. It's going to be October 13th. Yes. Luckily not Friday the 13th, just October 13th. And of course, I am live every Friday as well at 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. Central Time in Gudrun's Quilt Crew on Facebook, but also on YouTube. And I apologize, last week we weren't live on YouTube. It was shown private for somehow. Some of our streaming software changed the settings, and so we didn't realize we weren't live there for everybody to watch. But of course, that video has been posted since. So if you're a YouTube watcher, you can go check out last Friday's video. But we have fixed it, of course. So it'll all be good this week, and I'll see you next Friday with a cocktail in hand. Until then, make sure you like all our pages and subscribe and share our video if you can. We really do appreciate it. But that's it for us tonight. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you next time.